This looks a little bit older than a World War II era firearm. What are we talking about here?
We're talking about the venerable Winchester 1895 lever-action rifle. It was the favorite of President Theodore Roosevelt. He took a number of these on African safari with him in 1910 when he left the White House, and he called it Big Medicine for Lions.
Big medicine for lions. All right, so this particular model, over 100 years old, introduced to the public in 1896? 1895.
Yeah.
And was it immediately popular?
It was, and it had the patronage of the president. The United States Army had 10,000 of them made in a musket configuration, and they were used and field trialed out in the Philippine Islands during our occupation of the Philippines and putting down the insurrection out there. 300,000 of these, in fact, the majority of these were made for the Russian army in World War I, which had a much longer stock and took a bayonet. And they were made for the Tsarist legions that fought on the Western Front in 762 by 54.
Wow. All right, so this was, I guess, in a way, different than previous models of the Winchester, right?
Most of the Winchesters that came out, in fact, all the Winchester lever-action repeaters that had come out previous to this had a tubular magazine underneath the barrel. And when you loaded the gun, all the bullets went heel to toe all the way up to the full length of the magazine. But with the development of smokeless powder, we also changed our ballistics, and a lot of our ammunition went out the window in favor of smaller calibers, higher power, and what they called Spitzer rounds, or pointed ammunition rounds. Well, as you can imagine, having a magazine full of ammunition with sharp points to them, and the primer resting on the primer of the round in front of it, if you drop the gun, that would create a small catastrophe.
Yeah.
So John Browning designed a magazine that stacked the ammunition because Winchester wanted to keep a lever action, which affords the hunter a number of rounds. In the case of the 95, 5 rounds or 4 rounds in some of the larger calibers, the opportunity to get 5 shots off as fast as you could work the lever. And so Browning designed a stacked magazine. And this particular gun is in 405 caliber, which is big enough for any type of game in North America. It's got a 300 grain projectile to it. And it works, as I can give you a first-hand details. A month ago today, I took a 405-pound black bear in eastern North Carolina with one.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. See, we need to have you out here for the Hunter's Corner next time and talk about your experience there. But so this firearm, and you mentioned Roosevelt carried this with him when he was on safari in Africa. He was larger than life. I mean, was this a great publicity boost for the Winchesters?
It was. He had famous pull quotes that they used in their advertising. I prefer mine to be a Winchester. He advocated the lever action as being able to get a number of shots off quick. He once was quoted as saying, and he was blind in one eye after a boxing accident. He was once quoted as saying, "I may not know how to shoot well, but I know how to shoot often."
And this was also popular with law enforcement in the era, right?
That's right. The Texas Rangers and the Arizona Rangers ordered literally hundreds, if not thousands, of these in the carbine form. And those are found all over the Southwest. Great photographs exist of whole companies of Texas Rangers, mine guards to some of the precious metal mines in the Southwest, as well as the Arizona Rangers carried these well into the 1930s and 40s. The line ended at about 1936.
Wow. All right. And now what's the background on this particular gun?
Well, this particular gun, like I said, is in 405 caliber. Mm-hmm. Winchester recently started bringing out the 95 again. Browning, U.S. Repeating Firearms, started reissuing the 95. So you can find it in a number of calibers. And 405 is one of the calibers that they're making for the gun now. In fact, this is a box, a brand new box of Winchester ammunition just in time for the holidays that bears the likeness of the president and shows him holding one of the 405 95s on the back of a rhinoceros that he took on his 1910 safari.
Wow.
And what makes it of great interest to collectors is that the ammunition is a 300 grain soft point, and there's a head stamp, a unique head stamp that just says Roosevelt 405 Win.
And I hold it right like that, and I'll see if I can zoom in. And we can't. It's a little too tiny for my cameras to pick up, but that's very cool.
And this particular gun, we know it. It was in Africa for a while. It made its way through England and has a number of British proof stamps on it. So it has seen the world on safari.
Wow. Now, do you know? Have you been able to trace back the ownership through the years?
On this particular gun, it belonged to nobody of note that we're aware of. There are a number of 95s out there that do have provenance to Theodore Roosevelt. Personally, I got very lucky in my collecting, and I happened to acquire one of the 405s in takedown for my personal collection that belonged to his eldest son, Theodore Roosevelt Jr., who was a brigadier general in the United States Army and won the Medal of Honor at Utah Beach, making Theodore and Theodore Jr. one of two father and son teams to earn the Medal of Honor. And there's a connection of 95s there as well, because the other father and son team that have won the Medal of Honor, the father of that team was the officer in command, the Governor General of the Philippine Islands on Christmas Day in 1899, sent a memo back to the United States Ordnance Department saying, please take these 10,000 1895 muskets back. They have proven not to be useful to the men in the field. And the reason was because they weren't instructed properly in how to load the magazine. Up until that time, most of the soldiers were used to just putting one round in at a time or dropping them in a side door on a crag. But this was the first integral magazine gun, and they just weren't really that well versed in how to load it. And that Governor General's name was Arthur MacArthur, the father of Douglas MacArthur.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. See, this is why we love having you out on the show, because you've always got great historical stories, Phil. And again, just another example of the great firearms that are on display at the National Firearms Museum. And if people, by the way, in the Northern Virginia area or Maryland or West Virginia, if you're going to be anywhere really near Washington, D.C., over the holidays, what's the holiday schedule like for the National Firearms Museum?
We've extended our hours. We're now open 6 days a week from 9:30 in the morning. It used to be 10, 9:30 now, until 5. We used to close at 4. So now we're open 9:30 to 5, with the exception of Saturdays, and we're staying open until 7 o'clock on Saturdays.
Wow.
To make sure we get all those visitors that are coming in town for the holidays.
Oh, that's great. So if you're coming into town for the weekend after after Christmas, you can stop by the National Firearms Museum. You guys will be open till 7 o'clock on that Saturday, December 27th?
That's absolutely right. And, of course, as always, admission is free.
Hey, Phil, thank you so much for coming down, and thank you again for bringing another gun from the collection.
Always a pleasure.
Phil Schreier, the Senior Curator at the National Firearms Museum, joining us here tonight for the Curator's Corner.